If you are going to start a podcast with highly intellectual discussions surrounding books and their history, you need an award-winning and critically acclaimed host to do the job right. Unfortunately, we can't afford anyone like that. So here is the only guy we found willing to do the job, Jason Morrison. Grab some coffee or an energy drink, because it's going to be a bumpy ride.
All right, let's get into it. First things first, I'm going to need a better intro. I've got to work on it. There's a guy I follow on YouTube named Peter McKinnon, and he's a fantastic photographer, and he puts together some really, really well done videos. He has, I would say, probably for him, a signature way of welcoming viewers. Yeah, I don't have that yet. So for now, I guess I'm just going to go with, all right, let's get into it. Back in October, I attended a first for me, which was a book social event. And I feel like I'm naturally introverted, so this was pretty much well outside of my comfort zone. But I guess I love reading enough to tolerate being put in an awkward situation. So anyway, I went. And there was something about the event that I thought was pretty cool. And primarily it was the person that organized it. So this social was organized by a guy named James Markert, and he's actually an author himself. The reason that I think I enjoyed this so much was not just the person that he was talking to, but this guy didn't even make this night about himself or his book, or books, I should say. And sure, he had his latest book there, but I can promise you this. If I was an author and everybody showed up, you better believe that I would be carrying copies of my books with me everywhere that I went. But he didn't inject himself or his book at every single opportunity. And I just really thought that was cool because there was a lot of ways, or he had plenty of opportunities to do that, but he didn't. And he chose to make this night about the author that he was interviewing. That just really went a long way with me. So I saw the cover of his book, The Nightmare Man, and I was drawn in. And I'm a sucker for this type of artwork, and I'm a sucker for this type of writing. If you see a book cover with a creepy scarecrow against the backdrop of fiery clouds that look like they have emanated from hell themselves, you can probably bet that this is not a romance novel. Well, I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just like really that terrible of a romance novel. That's probably going to be the only way you're ever going to get me to read a romance novel, is if you put something creepy as hell on the cover, right? Before I get too far into this, I want to give you a synopsis of what The Nightmare Man is all about.
Blackwood Mansion looms, surrounded by nightmare pines, atop the hill over the small town of New Haven. Ben Bookman, best-selling novelist and heir to the Blackwood estate, spent a weekend at the ancestral home to finish writing his latest horror novel, The Scarecrow. Now, on the eve of the book's release, the terrible story within begins to unfold in real life. Detective Mills arrives at the scene of a gruesome murder. A family butchered and bundled inside cocoons, stitched from corn husks, and hung from the rafters of a barn, eerily mirroring the opening of Bookman's latest novel. When another family is killed in a similar manner, Mills, along with his daughter, rookie detective Samantha Blue, is determined to find the link to the book and the killer. As the series of crimes continues to mirror the book, Ben quickly becomes the prime suspect. He can't remember much from the night he finished writing the novel, but he knows he wrote it in the atrium, his grandfather's forbidden room full of numbered books, thousands of books, books without words. As Ben digs deep into Blackwood's history, he learns he may have triggered a release of something trapped long ago, and it won't stop with the horrors buried within the pages of his book.
All right, so that's pretty cool, right? I can't imagine me ever looking at this cover, flipping it over and reading what this is about and being like, you know what, this sucks. I don't want to interest this. Like, no, this is kind of the thing that's written exactly for me. If you don't like books, that start out with a family being butchered and bundled inside cocoons and hung from rafters of a barn, then we probably aren't going to be able to be friends. Now, I already mentioned how I thought the cover was cool and it drew me in, and normally I don't let just the cover hold that much power over me. I give my daughter a hard time, my oldest, because she she took an overseas trip and there were some books that she already owned and she wanted to get a different copy because it had a different cover. And these things are kind of appealing to her, but to me it's just a cover. It's just something that kind of meant to draw you in, and just because it has a cool cover doesn't necessarily mean that the things that follow it are worth reading. But this plot seemed really interesting, and there was enough checks off my list for me to grab a copy. And having the author there to sign it was really just an added bonus. On the inside, when he signed it, he wrote, "To Jason, best wishes and enjoy. Hope it gives you nightmares." Like, I'm sold, right? That's really all that I needed. But I want to go back to the cover for just a minute. When I got settled into my seat at this book social event, I had time to check out the cover, the inside, the back, all these kind of things, and I noticed there's a quote. Peter Ferris, author of The Devil Himself, a book I haven't read, offered a quote about Margaret that they love so much that they added it to the top of the cover. And it reads, "A clear air to Stephen King, dizzying, dazzling, and utterly spooky." This is going to be an unpopular opinion, most likely, but I don't like I don't like Stephen King. I've read several of his books, and some of my favorites being Needful Things and The Tommyknockers, Misery. Saying that I don't like the guy, I get that I risk ruffling some feathers. I imagine a puzzled look on Margaret's face on the off chance that he ever listens to this anyway, especially since King is listed as one of his favorite authors on his website. Usually when I say I don't care for Stephen King, that's met with, but he's so talented. And I never said that he wasn't. I just said I don't like him. I most likely will never read another book by him again. Several of the books I've read, while it's obvious that they showcase his talent and creativity, for me, it could just be overload in some cases. A couple of years ago, I thought I would go back and see what all the fuss was about and read his book, It. And I just didn't like it. A lot of that probably had to do with the fact that he wrote about the only girl of this group in the book, telling all of her male friends that the only way for them to survive was for them to have sex with her, which they did, which he wrote about, which he later defended, saying he was shocked. People were more upset about that than writing about child murders. And he was quoted, I think, on his website back in 2013 as also saying, "I wasn't really thinking of the sexual aspect of it." And I just kind of have this feeling like really, as a group of kids taking turns having sex with one girl and you didn't think about the sexual aspect of that, and that was your way of trying to connect childhood and adulthood. I just, honestly, it just kind of made me want to puke in my mouth a little bit. And I thought, I don't have to read anything else by this guy. It was just a thing that just really pushed it over the edge for me. Normally, I love backstory behind characters, but I don't need every single freaking detail either. Great. Susan had a troubled past with her spouse and drugs, which is now having an impact on the direction of the story. But I don't need her social security number, her eighth grade teacher's name, or how many pets her family owned 20 years ago. I want background information, but I don't need every single detail of their life story. So when I saw that quote about Margaret and King and linking them together, honestly, I kind of took the wind out of my sails a little bit. And I'm sure their marketing team was like, this is not this is not what we were expecting when we put that quote on the cover, right? We're thinking that this is going to draw people in and maybe give them a glimpse as to what to expect from this book. But I wasn't as excited about reading the book as I had been initially, honestly, because of that quote. And again, this is just a personal thing. If you love Stephen King, awesome. I'm not going to discuss it with you or really any of his books, and they probably won't appear here on this podcast. But I'm glad that I gave this book a shot, because if I had my choice of reading another book of Stephen King's or James Markert's, I would pick Markert's every single time. When I was reading The Nightmare Man, I could feel like there were some influences from King, but where the two authors differ is what made that big difference for me, in that it made Markert's book more enjoyable to read. It isn't too long into the book before you find yourself following several characters, all of which deserve to have enough of their story told to make the overall story worth reading. And I think that's what I enjoyed the most about how he told this story. There was enough told, but not too much. He seemed to know exactly where that line was. I love the present and the past mixed in with what initially felt like several different storylines happening all at once, only for them to converge as the book neared the conclusion. You have the lead detective and his rookie daughter on the case. There is tension and a really good backstory there. I love how he added those two characters in. And you couple that with a unique dynamic, and I thought that was a great addition. You also have Ben Bookman, the novelist, and his family, not just his family, but also his family history. And these are just a few of the interweaving characters and stories happening that made this a really good read for me. And as the story unfolds, you learn more and more about Ben Bookman, the heir to this Blackwood estate, which sounds cool at first, but ends up being just as extremely creepy as hell place. And you eventually learn more about something that they released that was trapped long ago and is now claiming victims in their town. A few things really stood out while I read this, and the first was dialogue. I don't know if I've just been reading a lot of nonfiction and true crime where there really isn't a ton of conversation happening, but this one caught me off guard. Margaret did it so well with these characters, how he told the story using the conversations that they were having. I loved how he built excitement and tension through the dialogue. It helped move the story along, and I found myself trying to read faster just so I could get to the next chapter. And speaking of chapters, his were short. That isn't to say the book was short or lacking, but anytime an author breaks out chapters into smaller and more digestible portions, I just love that. I love looking up after reading for a while and seeing like I'm on chapter 98 or something like that. And you know what else I enjoyed about this book was I kept trying to guess what was coming and predict the outcome. I mean, we all do that, right? You start reading something and you're thinking, oh, yep, it was this person. This was the guy. This was the girl. Here's the bad guy, or here's the plot twist that's coming, or I bet this is going to happen. And I feel like I'm usually really good at guessing that, but this book kept me guessing all the way to the very end. And I love books like that. It is, I mean, it's kind of fun when you're like, oh, I bet this is what happens, and you guess it correctly. It really isn't as fun when you figure it out early and you still have a lot of the book left. Like Margaret did a great job with this. And I think it's just a credit to his ability as an author and a storyteller. Finally, I so badly want someone to come along and turn this into a movie. My mind was racing with visuals. And as you get to the end of this book, there's, I don't know, my mind was just like trying to picture this, and I would love to see this on screen. I want to see these visuals, but it needs to be done right. Like I'm thinking, if you're going to remake something like a book or a movie, like I'm thinking Night of the Living Dead remake good, or not something like I don't know, The Human Centipede or Justin and Kelly. And this is probably this is going to be the only place probably on the planet where you hear The Human Centipede and Justin and Kelly mentioned in the same sentence. So you're welcome. But Margaret goes into great detail creating this world in his story, and I really think that if it's done correctly by the right people, This really would be a fantastic movie to see in the theaters. But did the book give me nightmares? So I'm sad to say no. I slept great after reading this. It's certainly creepy, but you have to remember, given everything that I've watched and read over the years, it takes a great deal to scare me, creep me out, much less give me nightmares. In fact, if you want to give me nightmares these days, it takes a vehicle broken down in the shop with a massive repair bill that isn't covered under warranty. Now that my friends is nightmare fuel. And maybe that's the book that I write. Either way, I really honestly believe that any reader would enjoy this book. It's just a good story. Like, it's creative, it's different. To me, it stands out. I can't pair this up with, oh, well, it's just like this other book. Like, no, it's unique and it's well told. It has plenty of suspense, and I do think it will scare some folks. And more importantly, I think it will hold your interest all the way to the very end. Now, if you read The Nightmare Man and you enjoy it, then I've got two more books that I think you need to read next. First, I would recommend Brother by Anaya Alborn. And that's a great book. And it's similar to The Nightmare Man in that it's dark where it needs to be, but it's not this over the top graphic detail so much that you lose sight of the story being told. Second, and this was something that I just finished the other day, you got to get your hands on Baby Teeth. And I guess there's a lot of firsts in this podcast. We talked about the Human Centipede and Justin and Kelly, and now I'm saying you got to get your hands on Baby Teeth. Welcome to my world. This is why I started this podcast in the first place, just so I could say things like that, like get your hands on Baby Teeth and not feel like I'm under police surveillance or anything. But Baby Teeth and I know that I'm going to butcher this, and I actually went through the trouble this time of Googling to see how she pronounced her name, but it's Zoea Stage. And this is just a good book, and it's excellently written, and it's dark in a way that's different from some of the other darker reads that I've picked up. This is just like, it just continuously messes with your mind. And as you get through it, the mind screw gets a little worse and a little worse. Like, she slowly ratchets this up towards the end. And I I posted about this the other day on Instagram. This book right now doesn't have, in my opinion, a very high review on Goodreads. And I just honestly, I think that sucks. But forget the reviews on this one. Go out and get it. If you like books like this, that book is great. I think once you read the synopsis, you'll see, and it's definitely worth picking up. That's all I got for this episode. I'd appreciate it if you had time to drop a good rating on whatever platform you're checking this out on. Drop a follow, notifications, whatever bells and whistles you got to click on or tap these days, and share this with somebody who enjoys reading new books. Until next time.